Hey dwellers, it's Jinx. Today I want to explain my AI workflow properly, because I feel like this topic often gets pushed into one giant box where every use of AI is treated as the exact same thing. AI art, thumbnails, music, TTS, local tools, cloud tools, stolen datasets, voice cloning, data centers, climate concerns, everything gets mixed together until there is no room left for context. This video is not meant as drama, and it is not meant as a call-out. It is a calm explanation of what I use, what stays local, what does not, what my boundaries are, and why my workflow is not built on stealing from artists. I also want to say something important right away. I am not here to defend every use of AI. There are bad uses of AI, and I understand why artists are angry about them. People copying artists, scraping work without permission, lying about how something was made, or treating human creativity like free material is not something I want to defend. I am only explaining my own workflow, which is mostly local, controlled, and built around material I have purchased, licensed, created, or have the rights to use. That local part matters. My image workflow is local. My music workflow is local. My training workflow is local. Node 13 and my assistant tools are local. This is closer to a self-hosted creator setup than a giant public AI service where I send every idea into some massive company pipeline. Some people may know the general idea from creator projects like Neuro-sama, where AI is part of a larger creator system and not just random website generates thing. I am not saying my setup is the same, but the point is that there is a difference between a controlled technical workflow and blindly throwing things into a public generator. That is the kind of distinction I want people to understand. The biggest misunderstanding is the idea that AI always means stolen art. That can happen, and I am not pretending it cannot. There are bad uses of AI. There are people who copy specific artists, misuse people's work, or treat human creativity like free material. I understand why artists are angry about that. I am 100% against that as well. But that is not what my workflow is. My setup is built around material that I have purchased, licensed, created myself, or have permission to use. When I use material for training or workflow purposes, I try to make sure I have the rights, license, or permission for that specific use, including AI training where that is allowed. That part matters a lot. There is a major difference between stealing someone's art from the internet and building a dataset from resources that were bought, licensed, or otherwise allowed for that purpose. Those two things should not be treated as if they are morally identical. And if I ever realize that a resource I use does not allow what I thought it allowed, I will rather remove it and correct the mistake than double down. That is the responsible thing to do. A large part of my workflow runs locally on my own PC. That means the work is happening on my own hardware, with my own GPU, my own CPU, my own storage, and my own electricity. When I say local, I mean that my image generation, image training, music workflow, Node 13 experiments, and assistant tools are handled on my own machine as much as possible. I am not sending every thumbnail idea, every music concept, or every visual experiment into a giant commercial cloud pipeline. It is much closer to a creator using a strong workstation for editing, rendering, streaming, 3D works, or game development than it is to a massive company running industrial-scale AI systems. Of course, my PC still uses power. I am not pretending it has zero impact. But my computer also uses power when I stream, render videos, edit thumbnails, play games, run OBS, or work on content. The point is scale and control. My personal local workflow is not the same thing as a global AI company running huge data centers for millions of users. That is why the climate argument needs to be specific. Data centers are not only an AI thing. Twitch, YouTube, Discord, multiplayer games, cloud saves, websites, voice calls, and game servers all rely on server infrastructure too. Impact matters, but the conversation should be honest about what is being used, at what scale, and for what purpose. For my own creative workflow, the important part is that the image, music, training, and assistant side is local and controlled by me. The core of my image workflow is not random scraped art. It is built from resources I have access to under proper terms. That can include purchased assets, licensed image material, resources where AI training or derivative workflow use is allowed, my own created material, my own brand assets, and my own VTuber-related material where I have the rights. I do not treat the internet like a free buffet. Community art, fan art, commissioned art, Discord art channels, and random portfolios are not part of my training workflow. That is a hard boundary for me. When someone makes art for me, gifts art to me, posts art in my server, or or shares their creativity in the community, that does not mean it becomes training material. Art channels are for artists and community expression. They are not there for my AI to learn from. That is one of the reasons this topic hurts so much. I do respect human artists. I pay artists when I can, I buy assets, I commission work, and I have invested a lot of money into real human-made art for my channel, including upcoming projects that I am not ready to fully reveal yet. So, when people say I do not care about artists or that I am just stealing, that does not reflect how I handle my workflow. AI is part of my production workflow because I am one person trying to keep up with a lot of different tasks. Most of that AI-assisted production happens locally on my own PC. Streaming is only the visible part. Behind it are VODs, thumbnails, editing, music, Discord, bots, lore, announcements, events, stream systems, and all the small graphics and assets that keep everything moving. And I know some people will say, if you cannot do all of that yourself, just learn it properly or do not do it. I understand why that sounds simple from the outside, but realistically, learning every single creative skill to a professional level takes years. Editing, thumbnail design, music production, graphic design, audio work, branding, writing, moderation, technical setup, social media, and streaming are all separate skill sets. I am already learning constantly. I am not avoiding effort. I am not pressing one button and calling it a career. But I also have a real-life job, responsibilities outside the internet, limited money, limited energy, and barely enough free time as it is. So, the choice is not always between use AI and hire a full team. Most of the time, the real choice is between use my local tools to help finish the project or the project simply does not happen. That is the part people often ignore. A bigger creator might have an editor, a thumbnail designer, a composer, a social media manager, a graphic designer, and a tech person. I do not have that. I also do not have the budget to pay someone for every single VOD, every song idea, every small graphic, and every project. So, my local AI workflow helps reduce the workload. That does not mean it replaces my creative direction. The ideas still come from me. The theme, the mood, the final choice, the editing, the text, the style direction, and whether something fits my content still comes from me. It is a local tool in the process, not the whole process, and not a replacement for caring. Music works in a similar way, and this is another part of my workflow that I handle locally. The lyrics, themes, emotion, and story are shaped by me. The local tools help turn those ideas into something usable, because hiring singers, producers, and musicians for every single song is not realistic for me right now. Would I love to work with musicians more in the future? Absolutely. Same with editors, thumbnail makers, graphic designers, and artists. When I have the money, I want to commission more people and build more projects with human creators involved. But right now, I must work within my actual limits. My local workflow lets me create things that otherwise would not exist at all. Because the alternative is not hire a full team. The alternative is usually do not make it. That is important to understand. For me, AI-assisted music is not about replacing musicians. It is about being able to express ideas, stories, and emotions as a one-woman creator who does not have a full production team. Now, my TTS Voice is a separate part of the conversation. Most of my AI-assisted workflow is local, including my image workflow, music workflow, training workflow, Node 13, and the tools I use around my stream setup. My TTS setup also has local parts, because I run my own TTS program and control layer on my own PC. In simple terms, my local TTS program is what handles the way I type, prepare, control, and send speech output to stream. That includes the text I write, the way the message is processed, and features such as whisper-style speech control, or other stream-specific behavior that I manage through my own setup. The voice output itself can depend on what voice backend I use. When I use Microsoft Azure text-to-speech, that part uses a paid online API. I type text, my local TTS setup prepares or sends it. Azure Speech Service generates the spoken audio using one of Microsoft's available voices, and then that audio goes into my stream. So, the honest explanation is this. The TTS tool and stream control side is mine and runs locally. The Azure voice generation part is online when I use Azure. That distinction matters, because my setup is not just random website talks for me. It is part of my own stream system, with my own local program and workflow around it. That is AI-assisted in the broad sense, because speech is generated from text. But it is not the same thing as me cloning a random person's voice. I am not taking a voice actor's recordings, training a private voice model on them, and pretending it is mine. There is a difference between standard text-to-speech and voice cloning. A standard TTS voice is provided by the service. You send text, choose settings, and get speech back. A custom voice clone is built from recordings of a specific person, and that has much heavier consent questions. That is not what my stream voice is. For me, TTS is not just a gimmick. It is a privacy boundary. And it is also connected to my severe social anxiety. My online life and my real life are separate for a reason. I do not want my real voice or personal details floating around the internet where they can be clipped, shared, twisted, mocked, or used against me later. Once something personal is online, you cannot fully take it back. Streaming already takes a lot from me mentally. Severe social anxiety makes it even harder to put myself out there. And TTS gives me a way to communicate without feeling like I am exposing too much of my real life. That is why I will most likely never speak live on stream with my real voice. My safety, privacy, and mental health matter more to me than satisfying someone's curiosity. People do not need my real voice to enjoy my content. They do not need access to my private life to treat me like a real person. The reason I do not see my workflow as stealing is because it is built around permission, licensing, and boundaries. Using material that was purchased, licensed, created, or permitted for this kind of use is not the same as scraping artists from the internet. Training locally on a curated dataset that I have the rights to use is not the same as taking someone's commission behind their back. Protecting community art from training is not the same as exploiting the people who support me. That distinction is the whole point. People can still dislike AI. People can still decide they only want to support fully human-made work. That is their choice, and I respect that boundary. What I do not think is fair is claiming that I am stealing from artists when my workflow is specifically designed to avoid using art I do not have rights to use. My boundaries are not complicated. Community art stays protected. Fan art stays protected. Commissioned art is not training material unless explicit permission exists. Random artists from the internet are not training material. My Discord art channels are not being scanned for AI use. My TTS stays because it is part of how I communicate and protect my privacy. I will keep using the tools I need to create, but I will also keep being careful about what goes into them. That is the balance I am trying to keep. I know this video will not convince everyone. Some people will hear the word AI and decide they are done. That is their right. But for the people who want to understand the details, this is how my workflow works. It is local where it can be local, paid where it needs to be paid, licensed where licensing is required, and built around the boundary that human-made community art and commissioned art are not mine to misuse. I am not trying to replace artists. I am not trying to steal creative work. I am trying to survive as a one-woman creator with limited money, limited time, and a massive workload, while still supporting artists when I can and protecting the people who create around me. You do not have to agree with every tool I use, but I hope this explains that my workflow is not built on theft. It is built on control, licensing, local resources, and clear boundaries. I do not deserve to be doxxed or attacked online or be threatened to be exposed where I live. I do not deserve to be kicked out of a friend group without explanation and false information being spread about me. Witch hunts are very hurtful and hurt my own mental. I am also open to answering genuine questions in the comments. I like talking about this and explaining it properly, because there are a lot of misconceptions around AI, TTS, local workflows, licensing, and what creators use these tools for. Civil discussion is completely okay. Questions are okay. Disagreement is okay. But hostility, insults, harassment, bad faith accusations, or people trying to turn the comment section into a fight will be removed. If you want to talk about this honestly, I am open to that. If you only want to attack, this is not the place for it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for keeping the discussion respectful. And please remember, you do not have to agree with someone to treat them like a human being.